My name is Barry Moehring. I was born in Tucson, Arizona, August 26, 1966. My father, Ray Moehring, was one of 13 kids off a farm in Illinois. And he is one of the only ones who moved out of Illinois and decided not to pursue farming, and he started an architectural hardware business in Tucson way back in the 60s. And married my mom along the way. My mom was born in Iowa, but she's from Illinois too. And they decided to start a life in Tucson, and I guess I was a part of that life.
So tell me, how did you end up in Benton County?
Well, so back in 1999, about 1999, we've been going on vacation, my wife and I, with her family to Table Rock Lake, and we've been doing that for about 25 years. So back then we've been going for a couple years because my wife's from Carthage, Missouri, and she had a brother-in-law who we were there with who said, hey, you should come to Arkansas. You ought to come to work for Walmart. And at the time, we thought he was crazy. I was working for Motorola in Phoenix, Arizona. My wife was working for a software company. But we gave Brad our resumes just to see what would happen. And a few months later, we got the call from Walmart and moved from Phoenix to Walmart in 1999. Phoenix to Arkansas to work for Walmart, I should say, in 1999.
So what was the Benton County like in '99 compared to now?
Oh my, there's been a lot of changes since 1999. We were obviously much smaller in population. I remember when we moved here, one of the big developments was the opening of Chili's. Chili's restaurant was a big deal. There were very few restaurants, and there weren't that many places to shop, but it clearly had potential. And what we were mostly focused on were our careers and our kids. We moved here with a 2-year-old and a 3-week-old. And I worked for Walmart marketing. My wife was the first part-time attorney ever hired by Walmart. And so we were buried in our careers and raising our kids and fell in love with it.
Did you plan on ever think you would stay here forever?
No, when we came here, my wife Cindy and I looked at each other and said 3 to 5 years. We're gonna be here for 3 to 5 years. And then we're out. And understand we had lived in Washington, D.C. and then in Phoenix, Arizona. So this is quite a step to come to Bentonville, Arkansas. And we didn't really know what we were in for, but we took the leap, and we didn't think we would stay here. But now, 22 years or so later, here we are and couldn't be happier.
So tell me, how did you end up in politics in Benton County?
Yeah, so when we moved here in '99, I didn't have any political ambitions or aspirations at all. We were very much involved with our careers and our kids, and that took all our time. But I did have a conversation. This gentleman approached me around 2012, I guess, or so, and asked if I wanted to run for the Quorum Court. His name is Tim Summers, still a mentor of mine. Tim had been on the Quorum Court. He'd been in the Bentonville City Council. He'd been in the state legislature and knew him from church. And I said, well, Tim, I'm not even sure what the Quorum Court is. And he said, well, you're going to have an open seat where you live in redistricting, and you might want to consider running for it. And so I learned a little bit more about the Quorum Court and county government. I had a little bit of past background in county government with Maricopa County in Phoenix. And so I knew a little bit about counties, but decided to go ahead and run, thinking I'd have an easy time, an open seat, and I ran.
So tell me about the race.
Well, what happened is, kind of a funny story. I was convinced that you're in an open seat, and usually if you announce and you talk to friends and family and coworkers, you'll have enough support, no one else will run. A lot of times JP races, nobody'd run for them. Well, in my case, there were actually 2 very, very talented opponents that decided to run. One was a gentleman who was the fire marshal of Benton County, and another was a police captain out of Bella Vista. And it was pretty intimidating. But I got out there and worked real hard and ran real hard and ended up in a runoff and won in a runoff. But it was a great experience.
So then, how did you what were the issues facing the court at the time you came on?
Probably the most significant issue we had then was related to the provision of ambulance service in rural Benton County. And that was an issue that had started plaguing the county around 2010, 2011. We were getting our ambulance service from the cities, and they were providing a great service, but as the area was growing, it was straining them to provide service out into the rural areas and they were charging the county a lot more for that service. And so how we would handle that and pay for that as a county became a major issue. There were a couple of ballot initiatives to try to fund that. One failed and one ultimately passed. But that was one of the most significant issues. And then looming in the background always has been, how are we going to handle our growth as it relates to our courts facilities and frankly our sheriff and law enforcement facilities, our jail.
Talk about that, the rapid growth that your predecessors and now you have to fight here in Benton County.
It's one of our most significant challenges. I'll start by saying I wouldn't trade the problems that I get to work on with the problems that any other county judge in the state gets to work on. So I get to work on some pretty great problems because they are related to growth and prosperity and people wanting to move here and how to accommodate that. But it has been a challenge. For the county, we don't have parks and we don't have beautiful avenues and bark parks and museums and some of the things that the cities get to work on. We work on things like county roads, and we work on flood control projects, and we work on jails, and we work on courts. And those are infrastructure projects every bit as important. And so growth has really impacted those, particularly in the law enforcement arena.
Who are some of the Quorum Court members that are on your court now that stand out, or some of the leaders of the court?
Well, there's several and throughout the history, but I would say the three that really stand out. One would be Kurt Moore. Kurt Moore is a JP out of the Siloam Springs area. He doesn't live in Siloam, but he's down there in the Southwest. He's been on the court, I think, 10, 11, or 12 terms. He's been here a long time. Very wise and knows the history. So Kurt is kind of a really solid influence on the Quorum Court. Tom Allen, who's our Finance Committee chair, he's been here a long time as well. I think he's been here about 10 terms, and he's retiring this year. Tom sits over there. He's kind of out of the Cave Springs area, and he's been a mentor of mine, particularly in the financial area. Tom's been wonderful to work with. And then the other one who I just have an enormous amount of respect for, amongst many, I could list other names, but Susan Englund, who really represents the agricultural community, represents it well, with a firm but gentle hand, if I would say so. She and I started on the court at the same time, got elected in 2012, and she's really been terrific to work with as well. But there's been a lot of great members on the Quorum Court.
Do you know her mother?
Mary, yeah, I know Mary. Yeah, I mean, I've not worked with her, but I know her, and I know she's been on the city council. So Mary Baggett has been a driving influence in the city. Yeah, so she's been terrific, and I have met and talked with Mary multiple times.
Besides county government, who are some of the other officials in the county that you've not become familiar with or impressed with over the years?
We're pretty blessed. I would say our cadre of mayors here have done a really good job. I think of somebody like Peter Christie out of Bella Vista. He's been a tremendous mayor in Bella Vista, retiring this year. Greg Hines, with what he's had to deal with in Rogers. And I say deal with, he has, I'm sure he would tell you he wouldn't rather work on any other problems either, but Greg's been great. He's been a mentor to me on what's going on with the cities. I've worked now with two Bentonville mayors, Bob McCaslin, who's mayor for a long time in Bentonville. Bob was a great mayor of Bentonville, took us through a lot of growth, and now his successor, Stephanie Orman, has just been a terrific one to work with as well. But some of our smaller town mayors, Kevin Johnson out in Gentry, Bob Tharp in Decatur, they have unique challenges related to growth, but just related to how do you manage a community of 3,500 people? They have all the same demands and needs that a larger city has, and so they have to come up with some pretty creative ideas as well.
What about some of the county officials? Who are some of the ones you work closely with here?
We have a really good team here. What I'm I don't want to say I'm proud of. I guess I'm proud of. We get along here. We work well together as a team, and it's a great team. I've learned from all of them. Sheriff Holloway, he and I got elected at the same time, and he inherited a sheriff's office that had some problems, no doubt. And I think he's done a really good job of riding that ship. Gloria Peterson has been here a long time, for decades, and knows the history, and she's always a great one to talk to. Rod Grieve, our assessor, really professional, I think has really upgraded the assessor's office. Betsy Harrell's our clerk. The clerk is one of the kind of the unheralded jobs of county government, but Betsy manages elections, and she manages making sure that the Quorum Court runs appropriately, and she manages marriage licenses and basically the records of the county. And she and her team do a wonderful job. So we really have a good, solid team.
Is there anything else you can think of maybe that I haven't thought to ask about, something that stands out?
I think that I think there's an underlying issue that affects Benton County and Washington County, and it is this issue related to growth. Because we only have about 15% of our population now is in unincorporated Benton County, and the rest is in incorporated Benton County, which means we're kind of split in how we have to think about things. We have to think about some issues as it relates to every citizen of Benton County, and then there's issues that, like roads, for example, that we have to think about within the context of the unincorporated parts of Benton County. But what that has meant is that as the incorporated population has really grown and encompassed the vast majority of the overall population, if you look at our budget and our emphasis and our priorities, it really does turn more towards law enforcement and the courts. Our court system and our jail has to work for all of the citizens of Benton County. And so a little over 60% of our budget now in its entirety is dedicated to something related to law enforcement or the courts, which I think is different from how a lot of other counties operate. It's just being an urban, more urbanized county now. It's one of the things that we have to work on and make sure that those are probably the most important services we provide for the entirety of the county is in that public safety arena that really goes to quality of life. The other countywide things we do, the assessor assesses the property and the collector collects the taxes, and we have Deanna Radcliffe, who's been our treasurer for a long time, does a great job on managing the finances and the disbursements. They work on behalf of all of Benton County as well. But our most public facing and most quality of life impact is in that law enforcement area.
If you had to talk to somebody, like I guess one time this was you, but who had never been to Benton County, and they said, "Hey, Judge, what's your county like?" What would you tell them?
I would tell them I think we have one of the most dynamic and attractive places to live and work in the whole country. I really mean it. I still have family in Arizona, and I've got a couple of sons now who live on the East Coast that went to schools here and did very well after school. But we just have a dynamite combination of things happening here. This area is home to 3 Fortune 500 companies, including the Fortune 1 company in the whole world. We have a very dynamic entrepreneurial spirit. We've got great amenities and recreation. We've got some third-party interests that really want to boost this economy and boost this region. And so it really is a great place to live. We have the best schools in the state. We have a world-class university just down the road. So we're very fortunate here in Benton County. We have a lot of great things going for us. And I think the secret's out. So back to your question, do I want to really talk a lot about it? I don't know. We have plenty of growth here. And it's because, we're well positioned for the future. It's amazing what's happening here.
2 more questions. If you had to finish this sentence, my favorite thing about Benton County is?
My favorite thing about Benton County is the people who live here and the attitudes and cultures they bring. This is a very welcoming place. This is a place where you can get involved in a lot of different ways, whether it's through your church, your community, your neighborhood, or the activities that happen here. And so I really love the fact that from the day we came here, we were welcomed with open arms. We've always felt like this was home. And I think Benton County has retained that even through all our growth.
And you may have a unique perspective of this last question, but let's talk about the way that Walmart and the Walmart culture has really impacted this county, not only through its growth and financial support, but also through the leadership of people like you and others who have come with a Walmart background. I mean, first of all, let's talk about the leadership. How does and you and others, your Walmart training, how does that affect your way you govern? Probably
the best professional private sector experience I had was at Walmart. Walmart is a challenging place, but a rewarding place to work. You learn a lot. It has a very unique culture, a very can-do mentality, and has had an amazing impact on Bentonville and Benton County. I don't, if Sam Walton were alive today, you hear that all the time, but if he were alive today, I really wonder what he would think, but I can't help but think he'd be proud. The leadership that company has brought in, the attitude that they brought in, has really been amazing. It's how they've earned their way to the top of the Fortune 500 charts. For me personally, I carry a lot of what I learned from Walmart into my daily activities. I mean, they have a culture of integrity and of accountability. Things like correction of errors, where you address things that went wrong head on and try to correct them, and making sure that everybody holds each other accountable. But at the end of the day, that company's about having some fun and really servicing the customer. And I would say one of the things that I've really tried to bring to Benton County is this idea of customer, in this case citizen service. It's really important that all of us as elected officials recognize why we're here and who we're working for. And a lot of that was born in me with my time at Walmart.
Anything else?
I don't think so. Just.
What about funny stories, or just off the cuff things?
Oh, well. It's interesting when you become the county judge of a county like this, and you come from where I came from. So I came from corporate America primarily. And one of the first things I did is I sat down with our IT director, the person who runs our information technology, and we were out on the website, and we had some jobs to post. And we had to post jobs for a dump truck driver, and we had somebody in IT we had to hire, and a dispatcher, and somebody in accounting. And so we're putting these jobs out there, and James is my IT director, and I was looking at him saying, here's what's really interesting about this, is I'm the county judge, and I'm not qualified to do any of these things. And it was an eye-opener, because we have a lot of wildly diverse responsibilities here at the county, and actually a lot more specialization than you might think. But we're very broad, but we're not very deep. I mean, the taxpayers give us what they give us, and so we have to make do kind of with shallow teams that cover a lot of waterfront. And I've been actually pretty amazed and impressed with what the county workforce accomplishes on behalf of the citizens. But that was kind of an interesting story when I first got here.